Yesterday, as I've been following the terrible situation in Texas because of a winter storm, people lacking power, some lacking heat, and more, I came across a Ted Cruz tweet that I found suspicious. This is Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who tweeted, quote, "Today, Senator John Cornyn and I sent a letter to President Biden urging for Governor Abbott's emergency federal disaster declaration request to be approved amid severe winter storms across the state of Texas." Now, when I saw this, I had an inkling that, wait a second, I remember Ted Cruz in the past when the natural disasters were in some other part of the country that he doesn't represent. I remember Ted being against disaster declarations and federal money for the affected states. So I went back into the TDPS archives and found that, yes, Ted Cruz really is a disgusting hypocrite on this issue. Back in 2012, when Hurricane Sandy ravaged the northeast of the United States, states like New York and New Jersey, Ted Cruz voted against providing federal aid to those northeast states. Why did he vote against it? Well, he said that the bill was symptomatic of spending money we don't have in Washington, D.C. But then in 2015, when there were floods in Texas, Ted Cruz wanted federal money for them. And then in 2017, when hurricanes hit Texas, suddenly Ted Cruz wanted federal money for Texas for that. And this actually came up on MSNBC back in 2017. Check this out.
But a lot of people are pointing out that you voted against aid for Sandy after that catastrophic storm up in the Northeast, that package back in 2012. And they're pointing at you and saying you're asking for money now when you weren't willing to help the people in the Northeast. What do you have to say to them?
Well, look, there's time for political sniping later. I think our focus
really
needs to be on this crisis,
Senator,
and this disaster.
That's right. It isn't political sniping. It's a pretty simple question of, it appears that you can be counted on to push for money for disaster relief for your state, but to stand in the way of similar monies for non-constituents. And eventually, Ted Cruz gives an answer. It's a completely bogus one.
These are people who needed money and who needed funding right after that storm. I covered those people. Many of them, just like those in Houston, lost absolutely everything they owned.
Well, Katie, of course, that's right. And the accurate thing to say is that I and a number of others enthusiastically and emphatically supported hurricane relief for Sandy. Hurricane relief and disaster relief has been a vital federal role for a long, long time, and it should continue. The problem with that particular bill is it became a $50 billion bill that was filled with unrelated pork. 2/3 of that bill had nothing to do with Sandy. And what I said then and still believe now is that it's not right for politicians to exploit a disaster and people are hurting to pay for their own political wish list. Disaster relief needs to be focused on the victims of disaster relief, and I supported that for Sandy, disaster relief there, and I would support that anywhere there's a major disaster without getting distracted by political unnecessary pork spending.
Oh, that bill had pork. I see. He's disgusting. And in fact, PolitiFact looked at this, and it's a talking point that Republicans often used in defending their opposition to funding relief for Hurricane Sandy. Some of them would say 50 of the 60 billion in that bill is pork, or 2/3 of it is pork, or 90% of it is pork. But the truth is that it was all lies. Now, it's not actually exactly clear how much of the bill from 2012 was specifically for disaster relief for Sandy, because there was money in there for mitigation of future disasters. And as usual, there is some pork, but that's business as usual. That has nothing to do with where the disaster is. That's sadly how Congress works. It's horrible, but it's many of Ted Cruz's own Republican colleagues who were responsible for a bunch of that pork being in the 2012 bill. But here's the key thing. When you talk about disaster relief, it should be part of it to prepare for the next one. When we talk about coronavirus now and the package that Democrats now want to get through, It includes money for rebuilding some of the infrastructure that Donald Trump destroyed, getting rid of the pandemic response team, throwing out the playbook, all of these different things. If we don't take steps to harden and make systems more robust, this is just going to happen again. And the idea that that's why Ted Cruz voted against it is absolutely insane. Now, let me be super clear. I don't want to punish people of Texas because Ted Cruz is a hypocrite. I want the people of Texas to get the money. I just want Ted Cruz not to oppose disaster relief when it comes to some other state, but defiantly defend it when it's his own state. That's what's pathetic here. And Ted Cruz has a long history of doing this. Many Republicans have a long. We're talking about Ted Cruz now because he's involved in this because it's his state now. But the same thing happened in, I'm going from memory here, but I believe it was in Oklahoma because of tornadoes, when there were Republicans that were saying, of course, we need the declaration in Oklahoma. We need the federal relief money in Oklahoma. They had voted against Sandy relief in 2012 for New York and New Jersey. I believe Tennessee. I mean, we'd have to look at the full list, but this is a type of hypocrisy that is not rare in the American right, and it's absolutely destructive. Ted Cruz is as disgusting as the rest of them. What if you could read 10 books in just one sitting? That's exactly what one of my favorite apps lets you do. It's called Blinkist, and what they do is take thousands of popular nonfiction books. They condense them down into text or audio that you can consume in 15 minutes. Blinkist makes sure that you're getting all of the important core insights from each book. So it's perfect for exploring a book you otherwise wouldn't have time for. If there's a full book you're thinking about buying, you can use Blinkist to get a sample first. Just think how much you can enrich yourself by being able to soak up an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. I recently checked out the book Podcast Marketing Strategy by Daniel Rolls and Kieran Rogers, and so useful, so particularly applicable to what I'm doing. Really recommend it. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.